Hey YouTube, my name is Evan George, and I'd like to thank you so much for some of you being able to meet me and telling me that you watch my videos. We have these pre-interview socials, so right before you sign up for an EnMed interview, you get to meet the students first to kind of see what the culture of A&M is like. And some of you, when I got to meet you, told me that you watch my videos, or you told my classmates you watch my videos, and they relay that stuff back to me, and it really makes me happy because the whole point is to help you guys out, to learn about EnMed, to kind of get into EnMed, and to help you on those interviews. So I really do appreciate that you guys watch and you kind of relay that information to my classmates. It brings like so much joy into my heart. But what I had noticed during the pre-interview socials was that some of you guys had like these common type questions, and they were like really good and interesting questions. So if you learn anything at EnMed, it's about meeting the need, right? What I did was I kind of wrote down and jotted down some of these common questions, and I had met with Dr. Moreno, who is the Director of Innovation for Engineering Medicine, right? And we had discussed these common questions, and we had pre-recorded some of his responses. So to introduce him once again, here is Dr. Moreno. I'd like to thank Dr. Moreno again for being here today and taking his time to respond and to answer some of these questions for you guys. So, and below, I'll have kind of timestamps of when each question was said. So you can kind of scroll through the bottom if you like and kind of pick the questions you want to hear. But not to further delay, Dr. Moreno, again, thank you for coming. And my first question is, what is the goal of the summer engineering classes?
So the goal of the summer engineering courses, I mean, there's one that's kind of the primary summer course, and that's the pre-matriculation course. And that course is one that I actually designed personally. And the goal that was behind that course whenever we were first developing the EnMed program was to have a course, since the program was so new and so unique, that was essentially a survey of what, you know, the curriculum was going to be, kind of compacted down into this single course, so that as an EnMed student kind of went through the curriculum, a lot of the things that they're taking a deeper dive into, they've been exposed to some of the terminology in that initial pre-matriculation course. They kind of have an idea right away what they've gotten themselves into. That was one goal. The other goal that was really important for this was to get them familiar with some of the resources that they have available to them. So initially we were doing, you know, tours of different facilities in the Texas Medical Center and even some of the labs up here in College Station at Texas A&M University. The other key part of that was not just the facilities that they have available to them and those types of resources, but also the networking part of this. And this has been really important. And I think that there's another message that I want to deliver with this aspect of it. So whenever I say the networking part of this, what I'm referring to are the expert panels that we have and some of the guest speakers that come in and talk about different things like regulatory pathway, intellectual property protection, you know, entrepreneurship, different design ideas and experiences that they've had in innovating medical technologies. But think about this. So these people that are coming in to participate in these expert panels or deliver these guest lectures, they're doing this and they're not being compensated. And they're very, very busy people. You know, so what's their incentive to do this, right? I don't know if that's a question that you know, EnMed students have ever pondered. And the incentive is that, you know, these people actually really believe in what the program is trying to do. They're probably familiar with these rare occasions where you had a medical practitioner also conceive of an idea and then somehow find a way to put together, you know, an appropriate team and strategy to see that all the way through the implementation. But that's very rare, right? This program, we're trying to make a very deliberate effort towards producing these kind of people. So I think they really believe in the idea. But then the second thing is that I think that they really expect that they're probably going to have further interaction, not just with the program, but with the EnMed students. And so there is that side of it that, you know, whether some of the students, while it's actually happening, are aware of it or not, you know, they're now starting to build this network of people that they're going to have access to as they get deeper into the program and they start to develop their own ideas and start to realize that there's certain partnerships or certain information that they might need to get that these people that they've met in this pre-matriculation course are actually still available to them.
With all these cool events and the opportunities to network, how can the students prepare for their summer course?
So that's a really good question. And I think, one of the things that wasn't as clear to, the first students coming in was what the program was about, right? And I think that now the word's getting out. We just had our special session at the annual meeting for Biomedical Engineering Society. There's a lot more effort on the marketing and communication side to kind of get the word out about what the program is about. And so it's no longer, I think, as mysterious as it may have been initially. And so what I would probably advise a student who's thinking about something like this is, take a look at the textbook that we're using. So the textbook that we're using is the Stanford Biodesign textbook. And you can actually, on the web, find different kind of biodesign related information. So if you don't want to invest in the textbook right away, that's probably where I would start is kind of looking into that, because the thing about the program that we have here, when we're talking about this master's degree in engineering, so this is a good clarification opportunity for me, is that, the master's degree that you're getting is not an advanced degree that connects to your undergraduate degree. It's really a unique master's program that was developed just for EnMed. And so this master's degree is focused on, the design and implementation of medical technologies. And there's some subtle nuance there that needs to be grasped. Whenever I say implementation, being trained in the entire process of coming up with some idea and what it's going to take to develop that idea, all the way through, protecting your intellectual property and realizing what kind of team you need to bring together to get that thing translated, that idea translated into clinical practice. And so, if you're trying to prepare kind of for that early course, then you want to familiarize yourself probably with the biodesign process. With respect to the other engineering part of it, because it's focused on design of medical technologies and isn't really, say you did your undergraduate in electrical, we're not talking about getting a master's in electrical, right? It's really going to be a pivot for every EnMed student, because there's not really an undergraduate program in, design of medical technologies, in the context that EnMed is working in. So everyone's going to be exposed to new material in that regard. And again, the pre-matriculation course is designed to kind of really set the tone for the rest of the program. And if you want to get a heads up on that, I would take a look at the biodesign process.
Now, with all this content, happening in the summer, and then this engineering education continuing into their medical school career, how are the current students, or how are future students, expected to handle this workload?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, when you're talking about trying to get this master's degree, and an MD in just 4 years, right? One of the things that makes that possible is, again, this master's degree is focused on developing medical technologies. So there's a couple of strategies that we have on the curriculum side to kind of help enable this. And so one is, if you're learning about respiratory physiology, then some of the engineering that you might be talking about would be focused on, different technologies that are designed to, monitor, diagnose, and treat patients that have respiratory ailments. Another thing that we're actively developing is this idea where we view the human body as kind of an engineered system and use engineering terminology when we're describing, different aspects of, the anatomy or even the physiology, describe the structure and function of tissues using engineering terms, not just medical terms. The idea being that, an EnMed student is going to think simultaneously in those two languages, in engineering and medicine, literally trying to blend those two things together. So now that may sound like that's enough in and of itself, kind of blending these things together makes it doable, but there is another very key component to this that I think is really important. And that's, the students that we actually take into the program, what are the qualities they have? Because the reality is, for some students, this really would be a challenge. And so there's a particular personality type, is the way I would put it, that we're looking for. So whenever we do, whenever we're looking over the applications, right? A lot of the students, all of the applicants that we're considering look good on paper. They're all doing, really well with their GPAs and MCATs and the shadowing and the different things that, a conventional med student would need to do to be accepted into a medical school. But, The thing that we're looking for is some evidence, in those applications that doing this engineering, doing this kind of tinkering with medical technologies might be something that's very natural for them. And so if I had to describe this another way, what I would say is this, is that the way an EnMed student, the ideal EnMed student would decompress from spending so much time learning about anatomy and physiology, the way they would want to decompress is not going to see a movie or going to play basketball. It would be, thinking about making something, going into the maker space, tinkering around with things. It's fun for them. That's the idea here. I think that personality type is going to actually enjoy, as concentrated as this program is, they're going to actually enjoy that because it's something that comes natural to them. I think those that don't kind of have a natural passion for that, for these personality traits that you see in engineers where they like to make things or see how things work, I think they'll survive the program because they're just good students to begin with. But the ones that are going to really thrive and enjoy it are those that kind of have this personality type that I'm talking about.
For this ideal student you speak of, right, with the passion to create and innovate, what are some more resources that they have for them to innovate?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're currently outfitting in the new building is this state-of-the-art makerspace. And so it's actually being modeled after what you see here in College Station, the Zachary, in the Zachary building, the Fisher Innovation Center. So it's going to be loaded with 3D printers, different mechanisms that you can use for computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing. It's going to have a fully equipped machine shop in it. Arduino systems, LabVIEW systems. So if you want to do things with electronics, you can do that. There'll be a tissue culture facility there. So there'll be a number of different things that EnMed students would have at their disposal. Now, this is something that I really think is going to change the landscape of the program because, let's be frank about this, right? When the first year students came in, this resource wasn't available to them. But it's not just this resource that wasn't available to them. The other thing that wasn't available was, a class of EnMed students ahead of them. They're literally blazing a trail right now. And we just started our second year students, and we're already seeing, something that we in education call vertical integration. And so this is something that the students themselves may not be aware of, but these are things that are already planned into the curriculum, is these ideas of ways that we can vertically integrate the program so that the M1s, M2s, M3s, and M4s are going to be interacting. And I think one of the hubs of that type of interaction is probably going to be the makerspace. And it's probably going to, be busy, with team-based activities. So I know a lot of students have come in thinking about, what's going to be my unique individual idea. But I do anticipate that in many cases, this is going to end up being a team-oriented thing. And it may not be a team just, of your peers that are in the same year as you, but literally a vertically integrated team because of the schedules that different people are going to have. If you really want to advance something, to get the manpower that you're going to want, taking the team-based approach is going to be the way to go. And of course, I think that the first class kind of coming in and blazing the trail a bit, they're gonna play a key role, I think, in guiding the students that are coming up behind them. But I think that to your question, which was really about this makerspace, this remains to be seen, right? Because it hasn't been opened up yet, but it's being equipped even as we speak. And this is something that I'm really excited about because I really think that this is going to kind of ramp up the productivity that we've had. I mean, whenever we started the program, we weren't anticipating EnMed students to get into developing ideas to the point that they could make IP disclosures until they were in their clerkship phase of the program, until they're actually in clinical settings and kind of dealing with patients and they've been trained in this vigilance for looking for opportunities to innovate. That's when we anticipated it would happen. And the reality is, there's a certain subset of the students that in year one, in semester one, were already seeking out opportunities to design things. And they were doing this in a scenario where they didn't have a lot of resources at their disposal because we were building out the program. But now that the new building is open and the makerspace is coming online, I think that we're going to see a significant ramp up in activity across all classes, the two that currently exist in the incoming class.
Thank you for your response, Dr. Reno. A lot of students are asking because it's kind of labeled on the EnMed brand to innovate and create. Are students expected to submit a patent by the end of the 4 years?
So one of the things that's been discussed with the EnMed program, was the students' activity in developing intellectual property. What were the expectations around that going to be? And what I'll say is that we don't have any requirements that a student submit intellectual property or that they have a patent. But we do have a requirement that they participate in the development of innovative medical technologies. So there's a number of ways that they can do that. Now some students are going to want to be independent. They're going to want to come up with their own idea, and they're going to want to develop that idea. And they're going to be in a great environment to do that, right? You're down there in the Texas Medical Center. The program itself has a lot of partners, including startup companies, academic researchers, researchers in the hospitals. You've got the clinicians, at your disposal, and the, contact with clinicians for me as just an engineer has been really vital to me developing the technologies that I have in my own portfolio. But, imagine the EnMed students, they're training to be the physician and the engineer, but on that pathway, they have access to both of those right now, experienced engineers and experienced clinicians. So the challenge is going to be identifying the problem, and we're learning techniques to do that. So to kind of summarize, it's not a requirement that you develop the technology, but you are going to be, the students will all be involved in developing technologies, whether through collaborations with some of these different entities that I talked about, or developing their own ideas. And I'll say that, again, we've already had several students submit IP disclosures. I think by the time the 4 years are done, the bulk of the EnMed students coming through the program will probably have their name on a patent one way or another, either through collaboration with the different entities that EnMed has partnered with, or through developing their own ideas. And again, the clerkship part of this, I think, is where we're going to see this ramp up. And, we don't have EnMed students in clerkships yet. So that's going to start next semester. And I think that we're going to start to see a shift in the ideas that are going to start to emerge. And it's going to start with, being in that clinical setting and identifying problems, problems that need to be solved. So a lot of times, the last thing I'll say about this is that, we give several examples of different technologies that people have developed that, they're not the Star Trek, or 2001 Space Odyssey kinds of technologies, although those are great things. In a lot of cases, these are very practical solutions. And so one of the more recent ones, because I could give several stories along this, but I'll just give one very recent one, was with Billy Cohn's group. And of course, he's a well-known innovator in the Texas Medical Center. But his most recent technology is actually just a self-cleaning endoscope. And so, this is not something that, requires some great new technology. It was really just identifying the problem. And I would argue that it was really just realizing, coming to realize that, look, this procedure is more difficult than it needs to be. So sometimes, the innovation is going to happen there. In the case of the endoscope, it gets fogged up or it gets blood on it while you're doing the procedure. You pull it out, you clean it off, and you put it back in. And most clinicians would say, no problem, just pull it out, clean it off, and put it back in. But somebody like Billy Cohn, who I consider an archetype of what a physician ear will be, he's wondering, well, why do I need to do that? It's, if I've got a patient that's under anesthesia that could be putting the patient at risk because it's prolonging the procedure, there's got to be a better way. Sometimes what I'm viewing is difficult to navigate to. So pulling it out, cleaning it off, and putting it back in is an unnecessary thing to have to do. So they developed a self-cleaning endoscope. And while that's not what I would call a transformative technology, you can bet that most people, given the option of having one that self-cleans, or going through this standard process where you pull it out and clean it off and put it back in, they're going to take the self-cleaning option. So imagine now that you've got these EnMed students in these clinical settings, and they're going to literally be trained and kind of mapping out these different processes, these different clinical practice processes that they're involved in, and basically assessing each step of these processes and trying to identify where's an opportunity for me to improve the way this is done. So sometimes improving healthcare is about things, like that, just making things more efficient, making them safer. And I think along the way, you're going to have some dramatic finds as well.
And let's say if we do have a patent we want to submit, what is the process for EnMed students to submit a patent?
Yeah, so let me make one distinction real quick. So there's getting a patent, and then there's getting a provisional patent, and it starts with an IP disclosure, right? And so one of the things that I think needs to be understood about the process is that for an EnMed student, the primary distinction, they're going to go through a very similar process as an engineering student, say up here in College Station at the university, right? Or even a faculty member for that matter, where you submit your disclosure to the Office of Technology Commercialization. The one thing that will make the EnMed students process a little bit different is that EnMed will have its own office. So it'll be actually submitted to my office as the Director of Innovation. We will screen the IP disclosure, and then it will go through the OTC process. Now, what I will say about this is that the Office of Technology Commercialization, what they're going to do whenever they get this disclosure is they're going to want to know, who are the potential clients for this technology, right? Who are the potential end users of this? And that's going to feed into how they make their decisions about what to do with this intellectual property disclosure, okay? So there are several things that can happen. And one thing I can tell you that some people kind of lose sight of when you're in an academic setting and you're submitting these types of disclosures is that, there's a difference between having something where you've got kind of this highly protected area, so in other words, you've come up with an idea that nobody's thought of before, and you can actually protect this idea where no one else can kind of infringe on it, and it's kind of your idea and you get to run with it. But a lot of times you can submit ideas that maybe are not as protectable, maybe not as lucrative, but you got to define what lucrative is. And I could give you numerous examples of these. So you can have things that, I'll give you an example. So one of the things that I was aware of and part of a submission for was a digital pain scale. So this is a software-based thing. You don't really patent software typically. You copyright it. It's something that somebody could probably get around if they really wanted to, but the reality is there's commercial value there. And so this is where the person submitting the IP, if you're an EnMed student, you're going to submit it. This is the process. OTC will evaluate it. They'll probably ask you, who do you think are the potential people that would be interested in this? And you'll tell them it's for these types of patients. So maybe this company would be interested in, or that company. That will help kind of get them started. They'll start looking at what are the options there. When they're in that mindset, if a company comes along, like a large medical device company, and express interest, then they're going to help negotiate that deal and license that technology to that company. If that doesn't happen, there's an option to form your own company and take the technology and run with it. And then the last option, is it could just be signed back over to you. And I think the point I was trying to make, earlier on about commercial value is I think some people get disappointed if they don't get the big company license deal, right? And the reality is, I've seen people achieve great success without that, right? So I think there you have it in a nutshell. You come up with the idea, you submit the IP, you'll get some feedback about what the anticipated value of that intellectual property is, and a potential strategy in terms of licensing it, doing your own company and starting up and running with it, and whether or not the university, what their involvement is going to be. If it's got some potential value, then usually they'll cover a provisional patent. And what the provisional patent does is it buys you a little bit of time to develop a full patent application.
And that's all my questions for today, Dr. Moreno. I'd like to thank you again for coming on.
All right, well, thank you for having me on, Evan. I enjoyed answering the questions. And of course, if anybody has any other questions, they can visit the website, or they can, feel free to email us. And we're really interested in talking to, potential students and making sure they understand the program, what we're trying to do, and how they might fit into it.
And that's all I have for today. I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope this helps if you're watching this and cramming it the night before your interview, or you're watching this to learn about the program. So if you have any more questions, or if you see me pre-interview socials, please say hey. Please tell me what I can do to improve, or what more content you need from the program. I'm here to help you as much as I can. And with that, I'll see you guys around.